I was standing 3 feet from my husband when he laughed and said it. She's just a trophy wife. A little outdated. The room froze. Investors. Journalists. Crystal glasses midair. And then he handed me divorce papers. Like it was the punchline to his joke. What no one in that room knew was that the restaurant we were celebrating existed because of me. My money. My contracts. My signature on every critical document. By the next morning, I would pull my investment. And within weeks, everything he built on my trust would begin to collapse. This isn't a story about revenge. It's about what happens when a woman stops being decorative and starts being deliberate. The word didn't sound loud. That was the worst part. Trophy. It slipped out of my husband's mouth smoothly, wrapped in humor, polished for an audience that wanted to be entertained. Laughter followed. Hesitant, uncomfortable, curious. The kind of laughter people use when they don't know if they should clap or leave. I stood beside him in a deep green dress he had chosen that morning. Hair styled the way he preferred. Smile practiced, controlled, ornamental. My name is Lena Brooks. I was 28 years old. And until that exact moment, I believed my marriage was a partnership. The age gap. The power imbalance. The way his world always came first. I told myself those were details, not warnings. He was holding court in Aurelian, the luxury restaurant opening that night in downtown Seattle. Cameras everywhere. Investors in tailored suits. A future he believed belonged entirely to him. Then he reached into his jacket. Not for a ring. Not for a toast. An envelope. Since we're making announcements, he said casually, I might as well be honest. He smiled at me. I'm filing for divorce. A man in my position needs someone who can keep up. The room went silent. They watched me the way people watch a car crash, waiting to see if I would scream. I didn't. I took the envelope. Nodded once. Thank you for the clarity, I said. And I walked out. I drove home in silence. The skyline blurred past my windshield, bright and indifferent. I didn't open the envelope. Not yet. The word he used kept repeating in my head. Outdated. Like a tool past its usefulness. Like something decorative that had lost its shine. What he never understood, what he never bothered to learn, was that I had been successful long before him. I worked in private finance. Graduated near the top of my class. Managed portfolios larger than most people ever see. When my grandmother passed away, she left me more than money. She left me control. Over $3 million. Earned, protected, documented. I didn't gamble it. I studied it. And when I met my husband, then a charming restaurateur with ambition but limited capital, I believed in him. That belief built his dream. And that belief was about to be withdrawn. I didn't cry that night. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because something colder had taken its place. Clarity. The next morning, I opened the envelope. The divorce papers were already signed. Not by me. By him. Dated 3 weeks earlier. He hadn't made an impulsive joke on stage. He'd followed a script. As I sat at my kitchen table, coffee untouched, memories rearranged themselves. The past 2 years suddenly made sense. The way he'd stopped asking my opinion. The way meetings ran late when finances came up. The way my name slowly disappeared from conversations. About a restaurant I had helped build from nothing. At first, I thought it was stress. Then I thought it was ego. Now I understood. It was strategy. When Aurelian was still an idea scribbled on napkins. He had been charming and attentive. He called me his partner. Asked for my input. Listened carefully when I spoke. I believed that meant respect. What it really meant was necessity. I pulled up my old emails. Investment drafts. Revisions. Signed agreements. There it was, clear as daylight. I wasn't just an investor. I was the primary investor. 70% of the startup capital. 100% of the early risk. The reason the bank said yes. The reason suppliers trusted him. The reason the lease was approved. And yet, at some point, I had been quietly removed from the narrative. I remembered the first time it happened. We were at a private dinner with potential backers. I mentioned cost controls. He interrupted me mid-sentence. Let's not bore them with numbers, he laughed. My wife's brilliant, but she worries too much. Everyone smiled. I smiled too. I shouldn't have. From that night on, it became routine. He spoke for both of us. Decided without me. Presented my caution as weakness. When I questioned expenses, he called me negative. When I asked for reports, he called me controlling. When I reminded him whose money was on the line, he said I was making it personal. The final proof came quietly. Not from him. From his lawyer. An email, sent by mistake, landed in my inbox. Attached was a revised operating agreement. My name was still there. But my authority was gone. Voting rights diluted. Decision power reassigned. Language rewritten to make me decorative. A silent demotion. While I smiled at events. And wore dresses he approved of. I closed my laptop slowly. Not in shock. In resolve. Because now I understood the truth. He hadn't outgrown me. He had finished using me. That afternoon, I called my attorney. Her name was Marianne Cole. Efficient. Precise. Not sentimental. I need to know my exit options, I said. There was a pause. Then she asked one question. Do you want this to be quiet? Or final? I looked out the window, watching the city move without me. Final, I said. That night, my husband texted me for the first time since the event. You embarrassed me. We could have handled this privately. I didn't reply. Because the next move wasn't emotional. It was contractual. And once I made it, there would be no way back. I didn't storm into his office. I didn't threaten him. I didn't demand explanations. I let the contracts speak. 2 days after the opening night disaster, I sat across from Marianne in a glass-walled conference room overlooking downtown Seattle. She had everything laid out neatly. Tabs. Highlights. Sticky notes. This is clean, she said. You structured it well. Almost too well for him. I smiled faintly. I like options. She slid one document toward me. Once you execute this, she continued, your capital is withdrawn immediately. Operating cash freezes. Credit lines collapse. And the restaurant? I asked. She didn't hesitate. 3 weeks. Maybe less. I signed. Not dramatically. Not angrily. Just my name, steady and legible. The moment my pen lifted from the page, and the document was uploaded, my phone began to buzz. At first, it was his business manager. Missed call. Then the CFO. Another missed call. Then him. My husband. I let it ring. By noon, the fallout had started. Suppliers stopped deliveries. A vendor flagged unpaid invoices. Payroll alerts triggered. The restaurant that had been toasted as the future of fine dining was suddenly scrambling to keep the lights on. And all of it was legal. All of it was documented. All of it traced back to one signature. Mine. He finally cornered me that evening. I was leaving a private gym downtown when he appeared near the valet, face tight with anger masked as panic. What did you do? He demanded. I looked at him calmly. I exited an investment, I said. You told everyone I couldn't keep up. His jaw clenched. You can't just pull funding without warning. I can, I replied. And I did. That was the first time he looked at me, not as decoration, not as leverage, but as a problem. Over the next 48 hours, his tone shifted. Anger turned to bargaining. Texts flooded in. We can renegotiate. You're overreacting. You're hurting yourself too. I didn't respond. Because for the first time, I wasn't reacting. I was acting. Then came the apologies. Private dinners offered. Therapy suggested. Promises made. You know I didn't mean it, he said during one late-night call. It was just performance. I let the silence stretch. You humiliated me, he continued. In front of everyone. I corrected him gently. No, I said. You revealed yourself. By the end of the week, the board convened an emergency meeting. I attended. Not as a wife. As a stakeholder. For the first time, no one spoke over me. They asked questions. I answered them. Calmly. Precisely. When the meeting ended, one of the senior partners pulled me aside. We underestimated you, he admitted. I know, I said. That night, I went home alone. Not lonely. Unburdened. The restaurant lights across the city flickered on, unaware that their countdown had already begun. And my husband. He was running out of places to stand. The restaurant didn't close overnight. That's not how collapses usually happen. They unravel quietly. Invoice by invoice. Apology by apology. Door by door. Within 2 weeks, Aurelian was running on borrowed time. Staff turnover spiked. Reservations dropped. Whispers replaced praise. The press that once celebrated his vision started asking different questions. Questions he couldn't charm away. He tried to pull me back in. Not as a partner. As a solution. He showed up unannounced one afternoon, standing in my doorway like someone rehearsing regret. You don't have to do this, he said softly. We built this together. I looked at him for a long moment. No, I replied. We didn't. That was the truth he'd spent years avoiding. The divorce finalized 3 months later. No spectacle. No courtroom drama. Just signatures and silence. I kept what was mine. He kept what was left. Which, by then, wasn't much. The restaurant shuttered shortly after. A brief statement was released. Strategic restructuring. Market conditions. Mutual decisions. No mention of me. That was fine. I wasn't interested in footnotes. What surprised me wasn't how quickly he fell. It was how light I felt afterward. The constant negotiation. The shrinking. The performance. Gone. I moved out of the house we shared. And into a smaller place with sunlight and quiet. I started working again, not for status, not for approval. But because I was good at it. I had always been good at it. A year later, I invested again. Not in a restaurant. In people. Women who came to meetings prepared. And were tired of being talked over. Founders with ideas. But no appetite for ego. I didn't introduce myself as anyone's wife. I didn't need to. My reputation arrived before I did. Sometimes, people still ask about him. What happened? What went wrong? I tell them the truth. Nothing sudden. Nothing dramatic. He underestimated the woman who believed in him. And when belief turned into clarity, everything changed. I was never a trophy. I was never outdated. I was patient. And then I was precise. That's the difference between losing gracefully and winning completely.